Now to a humiliating admission from the New York Times this week, which began with a story its rival, the New York Post, broke in October 2020 in the lead up to the presidential election. It concerned a laptop Hunter Biden had left at a Delaware computer store which contained alarming information.
Some big players in the media are batting for Trump, like the Murdoch's New York Post, which has endorsed Trump's re-election, and which delivered this bombshell front-page story 3 weeks ago.
Biden's secret emails.
Revealed, Ukrainian exec thanked Hunter Biden for opportunity to meet Veep Dad.
Trump's supporters in the media hoped that story would swing the election. But again, the facts are disputed.
The facts were not just disputed, they were effectively censored, as Sky News presenter Shari Markson noted at the time with much concern.
This is unprecedented for Twitter, a tech giant, and Facebook as well, to effectively end the American tradition of free speech, of a free press. Something, it's almost like the state media in China blocking what people are able to read because they're so desperate to get Trump out of the White House that they don't want to apply any scrutiny to Joe Biden at all.
But according to the American progressive media, it was of little consequence, as the story had no credence in the first place.
This laptop that intelligence officials have warned is likely Russian disinformation.
I get pretty fired up about how this works because, look, if the New York Post tells you your mom loves you, you should check it out. We are not talking about fully reliable sources here.
It feels like a repeat from last cycle. It's but her emails again, and it's kind of ridiculous.
And then the progressive media in Australia followed suit.
Those on the right are frothing.
When you look at the laptop, we call it the laptop from hell.
Whether or not the emails are real is probably the most important part, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of should be. Thing is, a lot of people are doubting the veracity of the emails, and indeed the whole sordid story in general. Also, more than 50 former intelligence agents signed this letter saying it felt like the work of Russian hacker scallywags.
It has been suggested that Rudy Giuliani has been palling around with Russian intelligence agents for some time, and that could be where this information came from.
There are big questions about the veracity of the story, first reported in the Murdoch-owned New York Post. When Giuliani handed the hard drive to the New York Post, a group of senior journalists met to decide how to use it. According to the New York Times, Australian-born tabloid king Col Allen was among them and urged his colleagues to move fast.
But guess what happened this week?
The New York Times finally confirms that Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop is real, authentic. The stunning admission and about face comes after the mainstream media and big tech blocked stories about this laptop, even smearing reports as Russian disinformation.
And talk about the New York Times burying the lead. They write, prosecutors had examined emails between Mr. Biden, Mr. Archer and others about Burisma and other foreign business activity. Those emails were obtained by the New York Times from a cache of files that appears to have come from a laptop abandoned by Mr. Biden in a Delaware repair shop. The email and others in the cache were authenticated by people familiar with them and the investigation. So, what does this say of the notoriously anti-Trump, pro-Biden media both in America and Australia? Tucker Carlson said it best nearly 2 years ago.
A cover-up in real time. No matter what happens in the election next month, the American media will never be the same after this. It cannot continue this way. It is too dishonest.
Well, James Morrow, very keen to hear your thoughts on this. I love how the New York Times took credit for authenticating it after spending all that time.
And Jack, this is such an appalling story for so many reasons. The way that big tech and Facebook and Twitter stamped down on this story is just unbelievable. Remember, not only could you not post the story on Twitter, you couldn't even send it to your mate via Twitter direct message. They would censor that as well. That is how hard they went on trying to keep this story out of the hands of those pesky creatures known as the American voting public. But this is a much bigger thing. The cover-up is one thing. The fact that they're all true now seems to be the much bigger story, especially given everything that's going on in Ukraine right now. The fact that the vice president, now president's crackhead son, was doing business with the Ukrainians and getting paid $50,000 a month as an oil and gas expert, which, you know, God knows what that was about, and also doing business with China and trying to get the Chinese to fund this massive investment fund for him, and doing all sorts of other things that look on the face of it like attempts to enrich the Biden family through foreign connections and influence and all of that. That is deeply concerning. That is actually what journalists should now be going back, looking at, reading Miranda Devine's great book, Laptop from Hell, which delves into all of this, and going through and figuring out exactly what the Biden family, not just the crackhead wastrel son Hunter, has been up to in all of these foreign countries over the years.
Yeah, and Caroline, it's a really good point. I've been checking the New York Times to see if they are following up on this, and it appears to be almost a lone admission by them in this case. They don't appear to be taking it up with the vigour that you would expect if it was a different party in the spotlight.
No, and again, it's terribly inconvenient, so they don't want to touch it. And then, in the next breath, they wonder why people don't trust the media. And then they wonder why people are going to alternative sources of media and why people are getting their news from YouTube and whatever. This here, they've shot themselves in the proverbial. They have done this to themselves. The minute that there is a story and you can tell that not only were they not interested or did they totally lack curiosity about this, but they absolutely tried to bury it. And as is often the case, the cover-up ends up looking worse than the original crime. And in this case, I do not know how the progressive media backpedal or try and message their way out of this, because it has been such a stunning failure.
Yeah, and it has to be said as well that our taxpayer-funded national broadcaster just lazily followed them, didn't even check it out themselves, and then just rubbished the whole story. And I haven't heard a word from them about it. No apologies.